It's always great to see a great defensive matchup here, and that's what we have in this Week 2 matchup as Maxx Crosby and the Las Vegas Raiders fly over to Baltimore to take on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens here. We're going to break down the matchup here and some of the key in-game matchups that you need to watch for both teams to come out victorious in this week's game. But before we get into that, go ahead and subscribe to the Tracy Take if you have not already, and leave a like and a comment down below and let us know who you think is going to win the game. After our Week 1 prediction videos, we nearly got 100 new subscribers just within that 1 week, and we're greatly appreciative to everybody who subscribed. But in this Week 2, let's see if we can break that 100 new subscriber threshold. Any help is greatly appreciated. So, Ryan, I want to throw it over to you here first as well, because the Raiders, they did end up losing to the Los Angeles Chargers here in their Week 1 matchup. Baltimore also lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Both were kind of grinded out type games here as well. But with the Ravens here, though, fell just short. And the Raiders, in my opinion, didn't look horrible. They didn't look great. But I kind of say the same about the Ravens. And it is Week 1. And so what are kind of some of your overall thoughts on both of these teams kind of after their Week 1 matchup?
Yeah, I thought the Ravens did a lot to hurt themselves in that Kansas City Chiefs game, and they still almost came out on top. So I think if they can clean some of those things up, I think that they would probably do pretty well in a rematch. And then kind of going over to the Raiders, I like the Raiders on paper coming in. Only putting up 10 points was a little concerning. I know it was a grinded out type matchup, and we'll just kind of have to see how they go throughout the rest of the season. But looked like Gardner Minshew had an okay game, had like a very Gardner Minshew stat line, 250, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, like right on average. And so I don't know, like we'll just have to see. The big thing that you pointed out to me before was it looked like they gave up 178 rushing yards to the Los Angeles Chargers. And that, I think, going against Derrick Henry is going to be a really bad matchup, especially everybody felt in the Kansas City game that Derrick Henry should have got a lot more touches. And I think he's going to get 30 carries in this game.
Probably. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, too, looking at the Raiders game, is I didn't think they looked horrible. I knew the Chargers were better than I think initially led on, because there is some good talent on that team. You know, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr. Sorry, I always get Samuel Jr. and Patrick Surtain the second.
Yeah.
Like they're both. I sometimes get them mixed up, and they're in the AFC West. But there's some good talent on the defensive side of the ball. But I knew that the Raiders had good talent on their side of the ball as well. And they still got Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers. They all had solid games. They spread the ball out decently well. Nobody had an explosive game on the Raiders side. I think it was just a grinded out game, and the Chargers, I think, just kind of had that edge. They definitely didn't have home field advantage. The Raiders traveled extremely well down to Los Angeles for SoFi. But they kept the Chargers to a lot of field goals, but they just struggled to kind of put points up on the board. And I think similar to your point, felt like in the second half, they just kind of kept shooting themselves in the foot. They had a fumble on their second possession in the first half, missed field goal. On the next, to begin the second half, they had a fumble. Next possession, they missed a field goal. And then they had an interception towards the end of the game. That was the garbage time interception. Not really anything to kind of hold off against Gardner Minshew. I think it was just a solid game. It was a Week 1 game. I think they want to see more from the offense moving forward. But I didn't think it was a poor game. Nothing too concerning to me, especially against a Chargers team who I think does have more talent than initially people let on for that. Now the Ravens, I think the Ravens, they shot themselves in the foot. And I think some of the play calling was, I'd be curious to see kind of what the outcome would have been if they gave Derrick Henry more carries after that first touchdown drive. Because I think he had 6 in the first drive and then 7 throughout the rest of the game. I'll go back and look at a second. But he did not get the ball nearly as much as he should have. And I think Lamar Jackson had an okay game. Didn't have a good fourth quarter. He definitely missed a couple of throws, including Zay Flowers in the end zone there and the penultimate play. But that being said, though, it is Week 1. I'm not super concerned about both these teams. I still think there's just on paper a lot of talent. I think both players like this. Both of the teams like the system that they're in. They want to play for the coach. Not like there's seems like any locker room issues overall. But when it comes to this week, I think it's going to be fun overall matchup here because it's going to be interesting to see how each team improves. It's kind of trying to come out victorious. But we'll break down that matchup here in a second. But before we get into that, if you do like to put a couple bucks down on the Raiders or the Ravens football games, check out the link down below. BetUS has a bunch of great promotions going on right now for first-time players that you're not going to want to miss. And the odds are going to probably fluctuate throughout the week here, but I would be shocked come Sunday if the Ravens are not the favorite. It's home field. I also think, too, they're just a significantly better team. Significantly might be a strong word. They're the better team for sure. I think just overall on paper. But there's still a lot of good talent, I think, on this Raiders team. They just need to just find a way to piece it together. But the Ravens, I feel, are just going to be a little bit on paper more superior. But especially to your point, you brought up earlier how many rushing yards did they give up there? It was 176. And that's with the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards type running back by committee room. And it's really just actually Gus Edwards only had 26, so it was mainly J.K. Dobbins. I think Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry can easily reproduce those kind of numbers here, just with their overall type offense. And another thing that's concerning too for me with the Raiders is it's not really like the receiving room for the Chargers is anything that's like a world beater. Justin Herbert only had 144 passing yards on today's game. They did and obviously because they're running the ball so much. But I say that though is Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, I would say are probably twice as good as the Chargers at running the ball in their overall offense. And so they don't really have the receiving room prowess. They also don't really have the best receiving room prowess, but Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are significantly better than I think what the Chargers are providing.
Yeah, and one thing too that is yet to be determined is just the overall of the interior zones in that Chiefs defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like as they also will have Mad Maxx, obviously, and so like it's going to be a good matchup, but I think it is more favorable for the Ravens, and so we can kind of get into predictions. And I am going with the Ravens. I just think, and this might be a bit hyperbolic, I really think the Ravens could have a good chance to win this game if they just run the ball every single time. Derrick Henry, I think, would wear down this defense. If he can get to the second level, I still think he has a lot of burst and a lot of like power in his game to break tackles that are not Chris Jones or like a defensive lineman. And so I want to see him get to the next level of that defense and potentially break some long ones. I also think Lamar Jackson will probably tune things down. He took a lot of hits on that Thursday night game on his scrambles. And so I think they're going to want to have a more traditional running game as well. And I just think the Ravens are going to be the better team. I think they're going to be the more physical team here. And I think they're just going to overpower the Raiders.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the interesting things too, because with the Ravens offensive line that you talked about, like it's newer, kind of put together, still a lot of talent, and I think then they can develop well. The Chargers offensive line, I thought, did a really good job today against the Raiders, and so that's going to be the overall key X factor. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I know Tyree Wilson was ruled out of the game today for the Raiders. I also believe too Michael Kuntz didn't dress as well. I could be mistaken on that. Correct me in the comments. That being said, I don't think that they would have helped out a little bit in the run game, but I still think the Chargers would have a similar performance. And I'm going to go with the Ravens also, because I think if the Ravens are able to move the ball down the field as well, or if they're able to run the ball effectively as well, I think it's just going to be a long day for this Raiders team. I think it's going to be a low-scoring matchup, though, just kind of the way both of these teams play. I also feel, too, as well, it's going to be interesting on how the Raiders are able to move the ball down the field because they only have 70 rushing yards against the Chargers today. And the Baltimore also has a good defense as well. And so I think they're going to be able to lock down a little bit more on some of their receivers, lock down on the pass rush as well, get Gardner Minshew a little bit uncomfortable. Because I do believe the Raiders are going to struggle to run the ball for the entire year. They don't really have anybody in the backfield. Zamir White did have a passing touchdown today. I think running wise, though, I think it's going to be a long season for them in the running department again. So I'm going to go with Baltimore here and doing this one at home.
Yeah, and that I just think Baltimore's better. Especially coming off a tough, heartbreaking loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Baltimore's going to come out. They're going to be the better team on paper, and I think they're going to have something to prove coming into this week. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on who you think is going to come out ahead in this matchup. Will it be the Las Vegas Raiders or the Baltimore Ravens? Sorry, I almost said the Las Vegas Ravens. And while you're down there, go ahead and leave a comment or like and subscribe. It's the best way to help out the channel. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.